Oh boy, 2007. 1 year since the release of the PlayStation 3, and 2 years almost on the date after the release of Ratchet Deadlocked, came Ratchet and Clank Future, Tools of Destruction. Now, the reason for that oh boy at the beginning was because at this point in time, the PlayStation 3 was seen as nothing more than a disaster. The 20GB model came in at a whopping $499, and the 60GB model was being sold for $599. The console also did not release with many exclusives to entice buyers to even consider purchasing it, when the Xbox 360 was not only cheaper, but more games were available at that time. Additionally, both consoles brought gaming into a new era for many people without personal computers. Developers not only had to begin their work on a more powerful piece of hardware, but also, in the PlayStation 3's case, the dreaded cell processor. Luckily for us, the big brains at Insomniac would not let the additional load of coding stop them from bringing us the next installment of Ratchet and Clank. To those of you who may be seeing this video first, please feel free to watch the other retrospectives, as I am roughly halfway through the series in case you need a refresher. Regarding Ratchet and Clank Future, Tools of Destruction, absolute mouthful by the way, the best word I could come up with to describe this game would be jarring. Now, I know what you may be thinking. In other words, this game sucks, right? Nope, I never said that. I chose the word jarring as it is the opposite of comfortable. It does come off as a harsher word than uncomfortable, but do not worry, I will explain. Just make note of that word for now, and we will come back to it at the end. After the original debuted on the PlayStation 2 back in 2002, each subsequent entry on the console brought with it improved graphics, better targeting, scrunch, tighter controls, weapon mods, the list just goes on and on. Insomniac innovated the series with each title, and after Up Your Arsenal, or Deadlocked for some, the fanbase was ready for more. And on October 23rd, 2007, the two gamers at the time that could afford the PlayStation 3 ran into the local game store and experienced the next generation of Ratchet and Clank. The first thing that came to my mind after booting up this game was the metallic shine that bounced off Clank with every step. Not only did Clank and Ratchet look more realistic and stylized, but the world around them had gotten the same treatment. It felt jarring at first after coming from the 4 entries available on the PlayStation 2, but the more I played it, the more that jarring feeling went away. Besides the graphical update, the controls also changed, albeit slightly. Ratchet is now capable of going directly into Hyperstrike after performing a long jump, which not only looks cool, but comes in handy. The quick select menu also changed into 3 separate rings this time around, but hey, I swear this thing changes every game. In terms of gadgets, the staples return, but we also get treated to an interesting one by the name of the Gelinator, a gadget that fits perfectly with the platforming side of the series. There's also the Helipod, Decryptor, Geolaser, and the Hollow Pirate Disguise, but none of them hit me as good as the Gelinator did. Now, you cannot have Tools of Destruction without devices, and in this game they also make their debut. You can make your foes throw down on the dance floor, whip out the Visicopter, or even summon an old friend. For most of the game, I never used these, as outside of the Groovatron, there's nothing to be gained from using them versus your regular weapons that level up. But what I liked about the devices and their execution was that they were an option. The game does not force you to use them if you do not want to, so it is not a forced mechanic in the game that detracts from the experience. Moving on to the weapons, the game contains 15 total. You start off with the classic pew pew gun and the fusion bomb, then over time, you get access to the others. Honestly, the weapon selection in this game felt lackluster. Sure, you get the plasma beast, the tornado launcher, and even the razor claws, but the weapons as a whole just felt like the same weapon from previous games, just with a new coat of paint. Nothing really stood out like the lava gun, the bouncer, or even the plasma whip when it was first introduced. Like, you know a weapon hits good when you cannot stop using it, yet in this game, I simply use the most efficient ones. But the good news regardless is that they are all upgradable with Raritanium. This resource starts off as precious at first, but as you go through the game and further your weapon's abilities, it gets a bit easier. This is another option in the game that, hey, if you don't want a stronger weapon for a more challenging run, then have at it. You can also power up the weapons that you care about and leave the rest at their default values. While Giant Clank does not make a return here, the beloved Gadgetbots have been replaced by the Zoni, who also serve a dual role in furthering the plot of TOD. Their implementation into the Clank levels, when compared to the Gadgetbots, was smoother and less clunky. There was little to no downtime in between the levels, as Insomniac sacrificed complex puzzles to instead focus on an active experience. And before I touch on the story, what would TOD be without space combat? Yeah people, it is back, and once again, it's different than its past iteration. To some players, its return is what I like to call sad face gaming, a state in which you are gaming and frowning at the same time. While to others, this is just what the doctor ordered, right? Remember that word jarring? Hopefully it's coming into play here. Just when you thought it was over, they drag you right back into the thick of it. Now, with all of that excitement out of the way, it is time we take a stab at the story. So after escaping the Dread Zone, Ratchet and Clank were doing what they do best, just hanging out. But then a distress call comes in from our favorite man. While on the way to save him, we meet Emperor Percival Tachyon, the last of the Crag Knights. Turns out old Tachyon is out here hunting the Lombax, and there you go, that is the plot of TOD. Now after being forced into cryosleep, they end up on planet Kobalia, where they meet this interesting fellow by the name of the Smuggler and his partner in crime. The Smuggler, being the unreliable criminal he is, ends up ejecting them during a ride, and they end up encountering the Zoni once again. But this time, they also upgrade Clank with a good old throwback from Going Commando. Moving right along, after attending the arena as Mustachio, Quark shares some information about Tachyon, who's trying to find the Lombax secret. Eventually, Ratchet and Clank come across Krunk, Zephyr, and Towin, who they team up with to infiltrate the pirate base on Ardolis, headed by Captain Slag and Rusty Pete.
What be that foul smell?
Aye, that oyster chili be disagreeing with me something fierce.
At this point in the story, we have a load of new characters and personalities introduced into the mix, and while the humor is still around in this game, it is nowhere near as punchy as it was before, as the overall atmosphere feels much more serious. But let us continue. After a Team Halo jump in the Gyrocycle segment, which is pretty fun by the way, Ratchet discovers that the Lombax secret was a helmet called the Dimensionator. They end up encountering another man, also known as a plumber, a staple in the series, and off we go back to the arena. The Zoni then warn Clank of impending doom for Towin, and the duo goes and breaks her, Krunk, and Zephyr out and find the Dimensionator. Then Captain Slag comes out the bushes and steals it, so you know what that means.
So then we take it back. Huh? And on that note, take it back.
Slag goes boom, Rusty Pete becomes one of the boys, and all that is left is Tachyon. It is revealed that the Lombaxes did not go extinct, but instead used the Dimensionator to, well, go to another dimension because of Tachyon. Turn on the epic boss music, and now the game has ended, or has it? As suddenly, when all seems golden, the Zoni come out and snatch Clank up. And roll credits, people. Jarring, isn't it? The game in itself is fine, the weapons, fine, the story, fine, and that is what led me to say jarring at the start of this video. Because when compared to these beauties, TOD in fact is. This game by all means checks the boxes for a next-gen Ratchet and Clank game, especially in 2007, in every box except one, and that is upping the ante. You see, TOD's jarring nature stems directly from the prior titles combined with the switch from the PlayStation 2 to the PlayStation 3. According to the wiki, TOD was planned to feature more planets, co-op, and an online mode, but due to the new engine, Insomniac had to scale things back in order to hit their deadline. So explanations like Max Apogee never got a chance to be fully explored. I am not saying that would have changed the overall message of the game, but more so that it is a factor to think about. Regarding the prior titles compared to this one, well, think about it for a second. Each installment of the series on the PlayStation 2 brought to light distinct aspects of the series in one way or another, whether that is level design, exploration, story building, or all three. Each game raised the bar for many in terms of expectations, but after cranking out the original, going commando, and up your arsenal, it is a bit unrealistic to expect an even better game, especially with the switch to high definition. I am by no means saying that TOD is a terrible game, because it is not. The game succeeded in delivering the next generation of Ratchet and Clank to the masses. It simply did not have the bells and whistles the other games had prior. With a 2-year development cycle from hell, it is a blessing us consumers got anything good at all. Games nowadays cannot even do that with double the development time. Looking back at the game now versus then really helps to paint the full story of what I like to call the Great Reset for the series. Even with the prior knowledge Insomniac had at the time and plans to further the series, they were fighting not only a battle against tedious hardware design, but also outperforming themselves during an era which could have been their last. So, Ratchet and Clank Future, Tools of Destruction. I appreciate you for bringing my expectations back down to reality and serving as the foundation for the games that would come after, as I believe the first entry into the PlayStation 3 era for the series had no chance against consumer expectations.